Hello, everyone. Great to be here. We hope to have a nice panel for you today. My name is Patrick Ayert, Global Managing Partner for Sectors. This is the Co-Head for Automotive and Mobility at Hogan Lovells, but more importantly, our two guest speakers, Ben and Marcus, and I would like you to introduce yourself and particularly also your company. I mean, you will know, but whatever you want to say, here's your elevator pitch.
Thank you very much. It's great to be with you all. My name is Ben Loewenstein. I'm the head of public policy for Europe at Waymo. For those of you that don't know Waymo, we began as the Google self-driving car project in 2009. And in 2016, we split out from Google. They were still owned by Alphabet. But more importantly, in October 2020, we launched the world's first fully autonomous ride-hailing service in the United States. And today, we're serving more than 250,000 trips every week. We've just finished the 160 million kilometer autonomous driving mark on public roads in the United States. And we are driving more than 3.5 million kilometers every week on US roads. Just to give you a sense of scale, it took us something like 13 years to drive our first 1,000,000 miles on public roads. We're now doing that about every 2 days. So it's a really exciting time for us to be having this conversation, and it's great to be with you all.
Thank you, Ben. Marcus.
Yes, so great to be here with you all from my side as well. So Marcus Welz, CEO Hyundai Connected Mobility. The name of the company is also the game of the company. So as Hyundai Connected Mobility, we have two business areas. One is advanced vehicle platforms, which go into the Hyundai and Genesis platforms, which includes our connected car service BlueLink, the infotainment system, the regular over-the-air updates, and also things like in-car payment, feature on demand, and other digital in-car services. And on the other hand, we are also a mobility operator where we're offering a new mobility service, mainly focused on car subscription at the moment, but also, let's say, curious on when we have more self-driving vehicles on the road in Europe. Nice to be here with all of you.
Thank you, Marcus. And I actually want to start with you. I think it's a fascinating concept, Hyundai Connected Mobility, as a separate entity, of course, within the Hyundai Motor Group. Tell us a bit more about the use cases and why your company saw a need to separate this from the other business, but of course, fully integrated. Tell us a little bit more about the use cases and why all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the why is quite simple because, I mean, we all know the transformation the automotive industry is going through, right? I mean, one of the key themes which we are working on is also the software-defined vehicle, meaning all the vehicle and technology platform. And you need a different scale, you need a different speed, you need a different process, and you also need different competences, right, within an automotive company in order to be successful in that area. And the same applies actually to mobility. And this is why we thought, okay, it makes sense, let's say, to carve these business area, these portfolio elements, which existed way before Hyundai Connected Mobility existed, and bring this in a separate company. And then we also launched a direct-to-consumer services across Europe. So we are serving customers, whether they are Munich-based, London-based, Sofia-based, really across the whole continent. And this also makes it easier from the setting we are having. And I mean, one of the, let's say, elements we are serving, for instance, is, let's talk with the basic platform, connected car, our product BlueLink, and BlueLink has globally around 14 million users. And in Europe, we are at around 2 million active users. And we've recently innovated in a more premium type of services just in May this year, where we're bringing additional services into the vehicle. And in a very short time frame, we have, let's say, more than 105,000 active subscribers. So this also shows that if you are really precise in the value proposition and if you bring new services to the customer, which solves a problem previously unsolved, that you can also, let's say, create a different revenue stream to, let's say, automotive companies. So it's a really exciting time. It's really for us more using technology as an enabler.
Okay. Thank you very much. So it's all about software-defined vehicles in your case and the direct access to the customers and the services in particular. Yeah. Now let's talk about another technology, autonomous vehicles. And to you, Ben, I know you're dealing with this for a very long time now. Where are we with autonomous vehicles, and particularly also in Europe? How do you see that? What is the biggest obstacle? Maybe the regulatory framework, or tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's a great question. In Europe, we have obviously a type approval regulation. We have a framework for the approval for the safety standards of vehicles across the EU 27, but we don't actually have the full legislative frameworks in each of those 27 European member states yet. We've got France, Germany, we've got Switzerland as a rule taker of the EU. We've got Spain, we've got Austria hopefully coming online soon, but that's it. So we've got a long way to go in terms of national legislation keeping pace with what's happening at the European level. And by keeping pace, I mean things like any sort of other legislation that you have in your country that could be impacted by AVs needs to be updated. I think in the Netherlands, it's something like 15 pieces of legislation need to be changed. Everything from road traffic behavior to what human drivers would need to do in the event of an accident. All of that needs to happen. So there is some work ahead of us in Europe. In the United Kingdom, where I live, we're seeing the UK government move ahead. We're seeing the UK government introduce opportunities for companies to run what they're calling commercial pilots. In other words, you will be limited in some capacity, but you can deploy a service commercially. And I think that's really the key question here. How do you actually deploy a commercial service? It's not just about the vehicle being approved, but really, how do we start to make an impact on people's everyday lives? And that's a question that local government really needs to think about in a meaningful way too. How do you actually take these vehicles and put them into some sort of service that can run freely in the streets, that can operate commercially, that people can see and touch? And I think what we're lacking in Europe right now, to come back to your question, is that iterative process. You have to learn by doing. You have to have people in the community touch the vehicles, see the vehicles, give companies the feedback on how the service is being run. That's how we've done it in the United States as well. And I think that's something to look forward to here in Europe in the near future too.
So, and when we discussed about this at our pre-call, unlocking the potential, of course, everyone says that, and you were just alluding to it with the commercialization of autonomous vehicles. How do you see that with software-defined vehicles? And we will then talk a little bit also about the regulatory framework, but tell us about your perspective when it comes to unlocking the potential when we talk about software-defined vehicles.
I think that there is one, let's say, golden rule which we always need to consider, right? And we often like to talk about technology, which is great. I'm an engineer. I could talk all day long about, let's say, software stacks, managed interfaces, and let's say domain controller frameworks. But the golden rule is really that, the use cases and value add need to drive technology and not vice versa. So I think it will be nothing out of the ordinary that a state-of-the-art software-defined vehicle will be available at a much more affordable price than today. And then customers can later also add specific, let's say, value-added features and functionality. And now I'm actually talking something which is not super new. It's actually also quite controversial in the automotive industry. It's feature on demand, right? So, and the concept says that there are some features and functionalities in a new vehicle, which then customers can temporarily or permanently unlock through a subscription. And it all started with heated seats. And I think we can agree that this is not necessarily a game changer, right? And here is the thing, because the first steps was more about bringing an old feature, an old use case like a heated seat, into a new car and then with a new business model. But what a difference it's going to make is when we turn this around and bring new features, new functionalities, new use cases in cars which are probably already on the road again, where a consumer maybe bought the car, 2 years ago, and then we use the software and technology to provide additional value. There are so many proven and reliable components in a car, whether this is the battery, the electric motor, sensors, detectors, and a lot of the functionalities can be enhanced through software, whether this is more advanced ADAS systems, whether it's battery range extender, and then through over-the-air updates, we can bring this into the existing fleets on the road, and we can offer a sportier driving experience or higher performance or more payload capabilities. And these are the elements when we bring this additional value add not available for the consumers when they bought the car, which then will also unlock new revenue streams for consumers.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think software-defined vehicles and autonomous vehicles clearly share the same challenges, I should say. In our pre-discussion, you mentioned things like consumer experience, consumer interaction, consumer protection, consumer acceptance. It's all about that. And I'm happy to hear that your subscription model seems to go nicely. So let's talk a little bit about consumer protection, consumer acceptance. One main issue is safety. So, Sebastian, are we there yet? I don't want to ask you, are the cars safe? But from your legal perspective, can we safely introduce them into the market?
The quick answer would be depends. It's a lawyer answer, right? But on what does it depend? No. In all fairness, my point of view would be, generally speaking, yes. At our firm, with our clients, our idea has always been yes, if. Yes, if it is safe enough. How safe is safe enough? There is a regulatory question to it, and Patrick, you're one of our masterminds behind the regulatory framework. There is also, like Ben and Marcus outlined, customer and consumer or user acceptance. And I would love to tap into one thing that Ben said earlier, and that's not our first rodeo. We've been on several panels already. In Germany, outside of Germany. And my takeaway from what you say often, Ben, and I'm not putting words in your mouth now, it's just my takeaway is, you got to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
Can I get like hands up who's already been in an autonomous vehicle? Like fully autonomous, like maybe emergency stop button, but you got to see it to believe it. Yeah. So one of the things, and Patrick, I would say, from a legal perspective, if somebody needs a sign-off and they believe in their technology, they believe it's state-of-the-art, they believe that this is safe, we can make this happen. But now tapping into Ben's brain again, and before I do that, you're a very humble person. You came on the stage, and for those who don't know Waymo, and you gave people your elevator pitch, it's the same with Hyundai, it's with Waymo. Oh, people know you, believe me. But what I love about your elevator pitch is every time I hear it, and I have no idea how you memorize those numbers, but they go up, and you always have the latest ones. Now I'm like, oh, last time we chatted, those were different numbers. So it's not like you go back to like, these signs like days without accidents. You guys just go through the roof. So in line of Patrick's question and what we're discussing here, we're in Munich now for this week. Munich is the pinnacle of the automotive world now. What would it take for Waymo? What would you wish for to come to a point where you can say, you know what? We can pull this off right here. You're pulling it off in so many cities around the world, the US. You're now expanding into Asia. You've got Tokyo. What would it need you to come here and give me a ride from the city center to the airport? What would that be?
Well, it's a great question. Look, let me start off by saying that we are, our company mission is to be the world's most trusted driver, not North America's most trusted driver. And doing that is a task that we approach with humility. It's a big ambition, but it's a task that we also approach with a sense of collaboration. I'm really pleased to be sharing the stage with one of our OEM partners in Hyundai. And so the partnership element to this is definitely a key element of it. But the partnership goes way beyond the vehicle platform. Coming back to my point earlier, it's about how do you actually put the vehicles into service. And so that partnership also extends to community groups, disability groups, road safety groups, and a sense from the public that we can work together with them to design a service that works for the city. I think one of the biggest misconceptions about the company that I work for is that we just want to sort of put cars onto the roads in cities around the world. That's really not how we look at it. The way that we look at it is how can we design a service that works for the communities where we're operating? And that's why you'll see that we have endorsements from cycling groups, road safety groups, epilepsy groups, blind groups, etc. And so if and when it becomes time for us to bring our vehicles to a market like Germany, those are the sorts of partnerships, the discussions that we want to have in place even before we make any sort of public announcement about where we're going to be. I'll complete my answer, though, by directly answering your question insofar as to say that, look, we would love to come to Germany one day. We certainly would. The technology is ready for us to be able to do that. We would test it. We would do it very carefully. But we would do so in partnership with local government, national government, and of course, the community. It's a really important part of this. And frankly, I don't think it gets talked about often enough.
And when is that? You said January 2026? No.
20, yeah.
You're on record. As your lawyer, we'd be like...
don't answer. And talking about this collaboration aspect, the consumer in the center and the collaboration locally also. I mean, when you spoke about the services that you're offering, and a user should decide what he or she wants in the car and just press the button and then it comes there. It's not that easy for you, I guess, to do that. And tell us a little bit about the challenges and why it's also important to partner on the government side, and which is also the title of this year, like to win, understand government. Tell us a little bit about your challenges when you want to offer these services to consumers.
Yeah, maybe let me give you two, let's say, examples, right? And one is, let's say, building on what I mentioned earlier when we talk about, let's say, bringing new features and functionality, new use cases to the cars, to the existing fleet. Then, of course, it highly depends on what this use case is, right? It is, I mean, over-the-air updates, for an example, for software is not new. We do that for many, many years. But as an industry, we are shifting from more incremental or bug fixes to new features. And here is the thing, of course, there is regulation, there is homologation, there's type approval in Europe, rightfully so. And this means whenever, let's say, a feature would, let's say, be from a functional perspective relevant for safety or environment, that we would also do a new type approval. And then it gets even more complex if once the cars are registered, there are also local regulations like in Germany, Straßenverkehrsordnung. And then so whenever you change any parameter of the vehicle, which is, for instance, in the vehicle certification documents, this is where we would need to ask our consumers, hey, you got more performance, you got a performance upgrade, great. Could you please go to the local authority and make sure it's reflected in the registration? And this is maybe something which makes it challenging, where also, I mean, we need the rules and we need the regulations, but when we get more digital in terms of the vehicle and the technology, also digitalization would be helpful on the whole, let's say, type approval, homologation, and of course a more unified registration would be beautiful. But on the other hand, I mean, we also recognize that governments are open-minded, right? For there is actually, when I look at the Ioniq 9, our flagship EV car, there is one technology aspect which is vehicle-to-grid, bidirectional charging. And this is a topic which actually we started together with the government. It started in the Netherlands, in the city of Utrecht, almost over 4 years ago, with a pilot project. The city was very bullish on, let's say, also coupling energy and mobility and really bringing a new system off the ground. And we could help them with, let's say, providing a fleet of back then Ioniq 5 vehicles with bidirectional charging capabilities. The city wanted to power this area with renewable energy, so they needed, I mean, storage, right? And this is what the cars could provide. So they were in a car sharing model. Consumers can easily get access to the cars. And whenever cars are not used, let's say you bring them back to a bidirectional charger and you can actually feed back energy to the grid, right? So we believe that vehicle to grid can really help, let's say, bringing renewable energies off the ground. It can help stabilize the grids. It's a gigantic power bank for individual cities and communities. And now we also saw that this doesn't only work from a technology perspective, but also from a business case, because if you have flexible tariffs like you do have in the Netherlands, then it could even be a business case for fleet operators or for the consumers, right? That they really charge when energy is cheap and they can reduce the energy bill and then even feed back money to the grid. And now we've brought this, let's say, into, let's say, production-ready cars. And by the end of this year, also the full ecosystem with the virtual power plant directly embedded, let's say, into the vehicle and into the app so that customers can easily take advantage of this. And so there is also elements where governments can help bring technology off the ground. So I think it's not black and white. It is only slow and obstacle. It can also be a proof point to make things happen.
Now, over-the-air updates. That's a topic that you've been dealing a lot. Do you want to add a little bit what the challenges are, and particularly also from a safety perspective? Why is the legislator struggling with this?
Well, obviously, I think from an engineering industry perspective, and that's what I heard from Marcus as well, it offers massive opportunities. And when you talk to consumers, users, and regulators alike, everybody's experienced with IoT devices that are connected to the internet, starting with our daily smartphone use. Everybody knows how it feels to run a software update. And that's not new to a politician, to a regulator. But like Marcus rightfully said, the moment you have a product that is highly regulated, and let's be honest about it, a car is amongst, if not the most highly regulated product in the world, at the same time being able to offer fleet operators, consumers, everybody, the opportunity to constantly keep their software updated without going into a garage. There have always been software updates, don't get us wrong, but over the air, there's a chance you can just do it at your own convenience, your own time, whenever you park the vehicle. For those of you who have connected vehicles, you know the feature. You push the button, the update runs. So there is massive opportunity. But at the same time, like Marcus rightfully said, from a legal perspective, one could say we're basically also messing with the vehicle. That's not what we originally placed on the market. And there is a little bit of a legal dilemma, a challenge that can be solved. On the one hand, looking at product safety regulation and legislation, for example, I think it's fair to say that with a modern product, including a modern vehicle, it's inevitable to have over-the-air software capabilities. One might even dare to say a vehicle that doesn't have such a feature is in and out of itself maybe unsafe.
Defective.
We can't, it's defective, it's unsafe, maybe, one could say that. On the other hand, of course, then the question is, what kind of over-the-air software updates are just customer satisfaction or quality? Which one are actually safety and thereby, by definition, maybe a vehicle recall? Which ones affect type approval, homologation? Which ones affect the vehicle registration? So it's a massive story, and it's always a question also, and compare it, and Marcus, Ben, Patrick, jump in anytime. We've all been used to a recall being us getting a letter, going to a dealership, leaving the car there, they fix something. Now it's a question of, can they maybe even push it on the vehicle without me knowing, without me consenting? Can I give general consent? Do you need to consent to every update? How can I incentivize consumers to do it? Can I force them if they're not doing it? I don't want to give all the answers here because it's highly complex.
But can I just jump in here? Because I love this. Yes. The recall one is so interesting.
Yes.
Because the recall is a great example of old school terminology that is being applied to a new type of system. We've had recalls in the United States, and they have involved very, very minor incidents where we have worked with the US regulator over the course of, let's say, 2 or 3 weeks. We've told them throughout the process, this is what we are doing to our software update. We work for them. They said, yep, you're good to go again. And there's been no disruption to the fleet, right? But it's out of an abundance of caution that we've done these things. But of course, then the media takes this and they look at it, and you know what word they pick up on? Recall.
Right.
Waymo fleet recalled over, So as we move into this new era, I think we have to be very careful about the sort of way that we communicate what is happening here, and we look at this through a completely new prism, as you're describing.
Right. Can I buy into this for a second? Because as you all know, as a product safety and also recall lawyer, I'm extremely passionate about old school safety, crash avoidance, if crash cannot be avoided, crash optimization, protection passengers. From you, Ben, I learned that there is more to safety than just thinking about a crash. And from a Waymo perspective, and that is something that I'm an old white man. Let's call it what it is. I'm making a point in a second. So what you taught me, Ben, and what might be interesting for this audience as well, is when somebody calls a Waymo, it's not just about you need to see it to believe it. This is going to get me safely, meaning without a crash from A to B. It's also a point where I learned from you, there is much more to it. There are people in the middle of the night who I actually like being transported by a car with no human being in it, who I don't know, who I might not trust, who I might not even be willing to give my actual home address, but who I'm going to ask to put me off a couple of buildings from where I live, just to make sure that maybe this potentially creepy person isn't driving me there. Can you tell a little about this level of safety that it gives to you, to the communities, to the users, that goes way beyond, and that is, I believe, important for governments, that's what we're talking about, to understand that when somebody says the vehicles are safe, it's not just safe in terms of they don't crash.
Yeah.
There is more to safety than that.
Well, you've teed that up very nicely for me, Sebastian. I appreciate that. Look, when it comes to safety, as you say, it's about more than just the vehicle performance. It's about the experience for the passenger. The feedback that we've had from nurses who finish their shifts late at night and want the comfort of knowing that they can get home without having to share a confined space with generally a man is a really powerful thing. If you use a guide dog, the safety of knowing that you can plan your journey without any fear of refusal of service as you get into a vehicle is a major, major thing. I also had a wonderful conversation with a blind rider who told me that as he's using the sidewalk, the pavement, he's always thinking about safety. He's always thinking about whether a vehicle is going to mount the curb or whether he's going to get too close to the side of the pavement where the vehicles might come, and if someone's not paying attention, what happens? And the security, the comfort of knowing that that is not going to happen is worth absolute gold to these people. And again, it's something that I don't think we talk about often enough.
Yeah, and I think, you alluded to it, it's the fragmented legal landscape, and also you said the existing frameworks don't fit AVs.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same issue that you also have with software-defined vehicles. So a question to you, Marcus, your wish list in this regard. I think you're struggling with the same issues with current fragmented systems, as you said it, as you put it. So what is your wish to the government?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually quite simple. I think governments should not necessarily define a specific technology, but really be, they be on this, let's say, safety elements, but in a more open-minded way, right? When this is, I think, when you also alluded to, it's not about the what. We need homologation, we need type approvals, of course, right? But the how we're going to do that and be faster, be more digital. And of course, if there is more harmonization, this is what I mentioned earlier on, let's say really the registration process, digital driver documents, this would be, let's say, like the registration documents, the Fahrzeugbrief, what we have in Germany, having this digitalized would be amazing. Is this happen, let's say, on the horizon? Probably not, but let's say these are the elements which would, let's say, bring this flexibility of the vehicle in itself also more to the whole, let's say, legislative topic.
And then with your words, learning by doing, which is probably a little bit missing here in Europe compared to the US. How do you see China in this regard?
Well, look, the Chinese question is complicated. We see a lot of activity from Chinese companies, a lot of announcements from Chinese companies right here in Munich as of the other day. I think, look, and this is not, I'm being diplomatic here by deliberately, but for other companies that are doing lots of driving, what we would love to have is for them to put out data about their safety record in the same way that we have. We have the data to show that we are reducing injuries and fatalities in the areas that we're operating. Put it another way, we are making communities safer as a result of us being there. And I think as this industry matures and more comes into the public discourse, I'd encourage other peers now in our industry to be doing the same thing, whether they're Chinese or from elsewhere.
Thank you very much. We're almost running out of time. Maybe one quick question from the audience. Is there like a top question? There's one. Okay, we'll have 15, 20 seconds, but we'll make it short.
It's got to be a yes or no question.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Can you speak a little bit about consumer privacy and how you guys are thinking about, taking images of people's faces and the type of impact that may have from a kind of government or compliance standpoint?
Quick answer. Who wants to take it?
You go ahead.
No, I mean, it's of course, I mean, fully embedded in, let's say, this is a 10-second answer is yes. And of course, it is like built in by design, right? Whenever there are more and more cameras, let's say, on the vehicle for different types of technologies, but making sure that, let's say, that these data are not safe, that these data are not processed for anything else, right? This is certainly, let's say, something which is built in by the whole way we set it up, also from the cloud backend system and everything around, let's say, the car.
You want to close it with one sentence?
Yeah, we don't care what your skin color is. We don't care what your race is. We do care what your height is and how quickly what your gait is and how quickly you might be walking along a pedestrian crossing, such as to indicate that you might jaywalk and we might hit you. So we care about safety critical characteristics. But other than that, we want to give riders privacy. Right? We want people to take a phone call. Last time I was in a Waymo in LA, I was stuck in traffic for an hour. I called my dad. I would never have done that in an Uber.
Great. And sleep in the car and hear great music with the infotainment system that you are offering. Wonderful. Thank you very much. This was fun. This was great. I hope it was also somewhat entertaining, and enjoy IAA the rest of the show.